King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
And welcome to episode 335 of the Broadcasters Podcast. King of Podcasts here with you. Website is kingofpodcasts.com. And thank you again for finding the program as you always do. And if you haven't already subscribed to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or YouTube itself, of course, find my YouTube channel at King of Podcasts, all that right there. Listen, I don't plug it too much because I know you guys are going to find the show anyway, and I appreciate all of you doing that. And also, you can help out yours truly with the Supporters Club, where I put up additional episodes of the program, and you can find that now also in the Supporters Club section at kingofpodcasts.com. So if you go and look right now, you'll see I have put out past episodes of the Supporters Club, where I've done some extra episodes of the Broadcasters Podcast, talking about namely the story with Puff Daddy, right? P. Diddy and the annoying, destructive video and his apology after that. I need to do more episodes, but if you want to go and be a part of that, you're welcome to go and do so. Again, kingofpodcasts.com. You can look for Supporters Club and it'll take you there. And that would be awesome to go ahead and, if you want to help out. So let's talk about Bad Boys. I watched it last Friday. I really liked it. I probably liked it better than the third one, Bad Boys for Life. Bad Boys for Life. And I'll tell you, something about this here just worked. It was like they really did one hell of a job of like having this new part of the cast involved, having past characters be reintroduced and brought back into the process. And the storytelling has been good. I mean, we had a good finish to it. The chemistry between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, no matter all the things that have gone on with them, they still make a funny movie. Those two are still good together. And I can't tell you the last time I went to a comedy that I really enjoyed, or like a movie like this that had a good comedy. Because these two were funny. And people were laughing all over the board. It was refreshing to see a full movie theater, because I was watching an RPX. Easily a couple hundred people in there, filling up for like a 10:15 show, 10:15 p.m. at night, on Friday night. And it just worked. It really did well. I enjoyed it, and I just had a good time with it. And I almost thought about going back again this weekend, but I'm not going to. But that's one of the advantages that Bad Boys has, because they reached over $100 million worldwide, $54 million domestically, and they're basically unopposed, because there is not another big blockbuster movie coming out this weekend that's going to really take their place. They're kind of left on their own. When you look at what they have and what they're going up against, it's not going to be that hard for them. Okay, Inside Out, so a kids movie, Treasure and Tuesday come out, and they are expansive. They're wide release right now. They're not going to do anything when it comes to the audience that's going to want to watch movies. That Bad Boys is there. Like for the current movies right now, you got that, and Furiosa, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and maybe The Fall Guy. But there's not much else out there to go and look for. So what you have at the moment now is you have Bad Boys Ride or Die standalone as the top action movie right now to watch, or even a movie that gives you any kind of comedy. That's it. I mean, there's nothing else going up against it. And then the next week you'll have The Bike Riders and The Exorcism. So might take away from that, but really I wouldn't see how Bad Boys Ride or Die couldn't dominate for at least 2 more weeks at number 1 in the box office. They had $100 million production budget. They're going to being able to reach $100 million worldwide already, and knowing that, maybe we're going to get 2 more weeks for them to go and be at that same top spot again. I can see where the movie makes probably a good $300 million, $400 million by the time June is done. And then I think what happens is, then you get a little bit of change, because there are more movies coming out into June 28th. Because then you got Horizon, the Kevin Costner directed film, the first part, and A Quiet Place Day 1. So that's where I think Bad Boys will probably not keep that number 1 spot after June 28th, excuse me. I think that's what happens there. But, maybe some things will happen in there. But like other than that, there's not a lot of action movies, not a lot of big blockbuster movies at all. Bad Boys wasn't even being put into the conversation as one of the blockbuster movies this year. Furiosa didn't do it. Furiosa has not done it. the moment has really kind of just gone, by the wayside. From last weekend's chart alone, after Bad Boys Ride or Die, Garfield movie's second, If is third, The Watchers, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes so far, $149 million domestic, and if I want to look at the worldwide, it goes to $360 million. Fall Guy falls well below. I think that's another $100 million movie. $85 million so far domestic, and if you go into the worldwide, $166 total. It's falling far below what they expected. Furiosa, $58 million so far as of last weekend, and then domestically, $146. That is not doing well. I think that it can be considered a bomb, the way it's all going on. I mean, and then after that, you have Lord of the Rings being brought back for people to watch, and it's making money once again for people that want to watch in the theaters. And then I'm looking at everything else is just kind of like by the wayside because there's nothing else after that. Like, what was it? 2 weeks ago, I went and saw Haiku the Dumpster Battle because I had nothing else to watch. And that movie so far in 2 weeks has made $5.8 million domestic and worldwide $15 million. And how much could that have been made on a budget? It couldn't have been that much. I don't think it was that much, but it's surprising enough. So right now, Bad Boys is going to be able to go and work off itself right now, doing very well. So the anomaly is this franchise, which was in 1995, 29 years ago, was in the summer of 1995. I saw the first one. Laughed my ass off. It was great. I think I also saw it at the Regal where I'm at as well. And, those two were hot. These guys are in their 50s right now. And you're telling me after everything with Will Smith's gone through, like there's a lot of controversy with him. But the thought that the Bad Boys are going to come back again after 4 years, do another movie because the success of the third the third installment, they rebooted, brought it back, it worked, brought in new characters, that worked. You got to ask yourself, what is it about the Bad Boys franchise that made it work this time? Again, unlike other movies, if you wanted to do the same thing. Because think about it, like the buddy kind of stuff. Coming to America, no, not the same. You think about Beverly Hills Cop, not the same this time either. Like, there's just movies that you come back into this and the one thing is that the two, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, are naturally funny, and they've done funny stuff throughout their career, and it's just something about those two have good chemistry, and whatever we're given for jokes and whatever they're going to do in the movie, it just worked. It just continuously works. Martin Lawrence very much plays the more goofier of the role, and then the straight man's more Will Smith, but it works. Those two just still have a camaraderie with each other. And then everything else they add into it, like the action that comes in those movies, is always it's just a formula. And Michael Bay put it out together, and it just works every time. So Bad Boys 4 sparks a month of recovery, not riches for the box office. But of everything else that was going on with the summer box office, the failures of Fall Guy, the failures of Furiosa, to not make the kind of money that could have really been made. Now, of course, strike late in summer because the strike pushed everything back. So there wasn't much left on the summer docket to get anything out there going. And that's for 2024. It's still a little bit of a bare cupboard when you think about it. So with that said, The Wrap wrote about this, and the fact that this action comedy pulled in, it was $56 million. So summer box office is now back to road to recovery, but the strike delays of 2024 and way the whole schedule is set up still is going to be miserable so far, but this really did help out. April and May were really, really lean. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was the only film that grossed more than $100 million in North America, if it's expected to cross that mark this week, or next week rather. And then theaters entered June in desperate need of higher openings. May grosses sank to the lowest outside of the pandemic since 1998. So again, we talked about this. Summer box office was already off to a slow start, but Bad Boys Ride or Die gets a strong opening weekend. Fairly diverse opening weekend audience. Black moviegoers, typical for the action series, had 44% of the audience. And while this franchise, again, is almost a 30-year-old franchise, 48% of ticket buyers were under 35. Now, I can tell you in the audience I had, yeah, it was probably 50%, maybe a little bit more, because where I have, just some areas not too far from me of the movie theaters that are available, people will go out for Bad Boys. I kind of felt like it was a Fast and Furious kind of crowd. That's what it felt like to me. But everybody was into it. Like, it was a fun audience I had. And, it just kind of worked. It was a good experience to watch in the theater. And that's one of those you want to watch in the theater for the excitement, for the explosions, for all the bang, bang, shoot 'em up. And to hear that crowd laughing and getting some good ha-ha laughs going on. And this was throughout the movie. This is not being pushed. It's not being pushed in the fact that this is like a pure comedy movie. Like, you got to remember, in the part that there's comedy in it, but it's an action movie. This is a antiquated franchise. This is an antiquated style of movie making, because this is like the buddy cop stuff. And we don't get any kind of movies like this anymore. So the rarity of this right here, it feels like a comfort to come back to this again. Now, on top of that, the score on Rotten Tomatoes was great. Like, if I wanted to go back and look again, last week when I looked at it, I saw the movie, had 97% audience. Like, really? 64% on the critics. Of course, they're not going to give it too much, but they give it something good. Yes, it's still 97% right now. 97% audience score. That's wild. It's great. And it works. And when you're going to make a sequel, if you can make it as good as the first, this is as good to me as, the first was great. Okay, when they do the rankings of the movies, I'm of the opinion right now that I think, give me the first one, Ride or Die. I'll say Bad Boys for Life, the third one, and then Bad Boys 2. The Gabrielle Union one, yeah, that's the last one. So yeah, 1, 4, 3, 2. That's my order of Bad Boy movies. But it was really good. And by the way, it is a Fast and Furious format as well, because in a way, you do have like the soundtrack. You got some good songs over there, some good like flavor into that. I enjoyed the soundtrack on that as well. And you get the cars, you get the whole Miami feel too, because of course I'm, South Florida born and bred. So to see Miami aesthetics all throughout the movie, it just works. Everything they did was it has that feeling. Of course, it's a Miami feel to it, but I think people really just resonate with this movie because of how it's done and just the way they put it together. Now, gender splits were also 53% male. Furiosa had a 72% male audience for it. But see, in this movie, yeah, you get a more even audience, because there definitely was couples. Lots of couples in this movie. I saw that as well. That could not be denied right there. A lot of couples watching this movie. ComScore analyst Paul DeCarabedian says that, quote, we're running from a standing start at a time when everything is usually going at high speed. From January 1st, we've been playing catch up and having to get wind in the sails again and again and again. Now, in terms of the weekend for the summer and how much money was coming in, is 38% down from the same weekend last year. But right now, Bad Boys Ride or Die is accounting for more than half of all U.S. theatrical business this weekend. That's it. Half of it. And, there's just no other movies that go up against it. And the truth is, I think that even if you put them up again, where you see if Bad Boys would have any other competition, I think other movies would struggle against them. I really do. So if I look at the numbers, if I go back to 2020 and I remember looking at what the movies did, Bad Boys for Life, it was the number one movie at the domestic box office, of course, in a pandemic era. But still, like, for what it was worth, it had basically a full run at the box office. I mean, if I go back and look once again, that movie, I forget when the exact time it started. I think it was like the weekend of February 14th. I want to say it was. Oh, excuse me. It was January 17th domestic release. So it probably had at least a good month to go out there and be seen. Because the pandemic really didn't get into full gear until March, or like first week, second week of March. So the possibility was going to get the full release like it would normally get. It was one of the few movies that got that chance of having that full release afterwards. So they come back. Movie makes $424 million worldwide, 204 domestic. My guess right now is I think they're going to be able to pull that off. Because if I look at it at the moment, I got to see what it looks like in terms of what their schedule looks like and how much money they're going to be able to make, all the way across, and what will happen. Because that's going to be the interesting part about how much they're going to be able to make it to that point. Okay, the box office went to start over there for that week, when Bad Boys for Life came out. January 2020, $62 million the first week. Then $34 million, $17 million, $12, $11. And it just dropped off from there. And then again, in that first 5 weeks, it was in bulk of theaters. So again, 3,500 to 3,700 theaters at the time. And if I had to go and look at what other movies were going up against it, that's the other thing I can take a look as well, of what movies they were going up against at the same time. If I go back and look at what they had. In theaters for that week, it was Doolittle. That was their competition. And that wasn't a good choice for that. And then the week before that, it was 1917 and Like a Boss. Like, there was not much else after that either. Or there was Underwater, and a couple others. And I think, remember, this is like the start of January, which usually is always a bad point. The Grudge came out that year on January 3rd. And there was no other real action movies going on at that time. So Bad Boys being that first kind of movie that came out as a blockbuster, putting it out in January of all times. And it worked. And they brought it back this time. They put it in June. So at this point, it's going to be unopposed for 2 more weeks. I see it at least matching the amount that they made worldwide. I really think that'll happen. I think there's going to be word of mouth that's going to get people back together once again. And Mike Lowry and Marcus Burnett are going to get the interest of everybody coming back to go and watch this movie once again. They're all going to come back and watch one more time. It's going to work. So good for them. Good on them. Congratulations to them. Now, back into the movie here. Comparing the fact that the movies that we had, 2023 was $1 billion. You had Barbenheimer, and then you had, $968 million in 2022. And theaters had strong holdover support on Memorial Day weekend with Top Gun Maverick and A Little Mermaid. That was 2 years ago. And it was just, kicking ass. And it worked. Now, Furious has already jumped out of the top 5 this weekend. And movies that will probably do well to continue to move the box office up will be Inside Out 2 and Quiet Place Day 1. Now, Inside Out 2, they're expecting to get a $90 million opening. So maybe, Inside Out 2, Disney movie, that'll probably get the run to start off. But like I said, I think we're not going to hurt too much from seeing Bad Boys back out there making good money up against it because, that's a kid audience. The adults need something here, and they don't have any real horror movies they're going to watch, and nothing else, much else that's just already been out there since Memorial Day. So they're going to go to this. And then you have specialty films like Kind of Kindness and The Bike Riders that will draw marginal support from younger art house audiences turning out for movies. And July is when we expect momentum because July 3rd we got Despicable Me 4 and Deadpool and Wolverine July 26th to kind of build things out and push things over the top. The theaters need to hope that the release slate will accomplish what they need right now, the blockbuster season, how much the strikes prolong the studio's reluctance in negotiating on performance-based streaming revenue sharing. We've talked about that already. So now we'll wait and see what they're going to do in terms of where the movie's going to go and do and what kind of money it's going to make back. But it's still an anomaly. They were going to make it back like it did. 5 reasons why the movie conquered the box office. Slash Film gives their take, and here's what they say about this. First of all, they say the summer competition is very weak. And again, that's taking advantage of that. Why not? Listen, Furious and Fall Guy could have done really, really well, but they both bombed. As hard as they bombed, And that's already hurting the bottom line. So it's a weak slate of blockbuster competition that only helps Bad Boys Ride or Die, and nothing else will stand in his way. And like I said, I think this week and coming up, we'll do the same thing. They also make the mention in this story that the movie was good. What cannot be underestimated is in this equation is the reception to 2020's Bad Boys for Life. Smith and Lawrence reunited for what was a surprisingly enriching cinematic experience. More than just some legacy sequel or cash grab nobody asked for. It ended up being a genuinely great blockbuster that stood on its own 2 feet. Also important to point out that it was the highest grossing American film of 2020. And, maybe not as many people might have watched it, but they enjoyed it. And they were willing to go ahead and watch another sequel. We all knew there was another sequel coming up, so we all did. And the directing team of Arby and Fowler directed another crowd pleaser. And critics might have been more mixed on it, but the reception was still generally positive. And not only did the previous installment deliver the goods and leave audiences wanting more, the follow-up also delivered and led to good word of mouth. Hard to reasonably ask for anything more. And they talk about what was really being sold on this movie when the marketing was being put on this. It's another Bad Boys adventure, plain and simple. Sony, when they put the picture out, didn't overcomplicate matters by trying to craft some legacy sequel by hyping up the return of characters they might not even care about, or lean on new characters that might potentially be able to carry the franchise for years to come. No. Kept it around Mike and Marcus. And for whatever reason, to see a movie come back, restart the franchise after a long time off, and it works? I'll tell you this, Ghostbusters coming back after a long time, and, the way they brought it back, the brought back was good. Frozen Empire, we didn't need another sequel. We didn't need another sequel. That didn't work for me. I thought they missed on that. Because there's still a whole lot being taken away from things. And to see, Bill Murray coming back and Ernie Hudson coming back in, but it's not the same. You really just can't bring people back. That's a legacy sequel that they're trying to bring back characters and, really put some hype. That was what's being done with Ghostbusters, which did not do well compared to what Bad Boys Ride or Die did. They also make the point that it probably shouldn't be something worth highlighting, but in the era of true franchise obsession, it matters. If either a movie is marketed as part of a larger whole, like the trend of a part 1, paving the way for an eventual part 2, or marketing playing up the whole thing like a big secret. In this case, we didn't get half a movie and there was no big secret underneath it at all. It was just a sequel to a movie people liked once that was more or less another helping of the same. And I don't think we lost any quality in this movie at all. From the third to the fourth, it's as good. And I think the fourth one probably did better. I really do. I don't know why, but I think it just did better. But that's also, you got to give me the movie that really didn't do it for me was the second one. Bad Boys 2, no, it didn't really hit well. And that's why. But 3 and 4 give me the same kind of feeling and the same kind of excitement that the first one did. And even that, they just see the difference. It was just a different story. Now, the other thing that happened here that was very interesting is that when it comes down to it, they didn't go crazy with the budget. Sony actually, it was a $100 million campaign, they said. So Sony played the relativity game with a $100 million budget right now. Perfectly reasonable for a big summer action movie. And the studio didn't go crazy with an increased budget compared to the previous installment, where something can sometimes go wrong. $90 million they did for the third one, and the fourth at $100 million. Remember, Fall Guy had $130 million to make. And it's just a big disappointment. It's not a bad movie. I like it. I didn't think it was that bad, but you're some people might feel they might have felt perturbed because there wasn't anything about the nostalgia in it, but there actually was. And, I think it's also having Ryan Gosling being an action star when he really hasn't been that. That's the part I think that people really couldn't get to wrap themselves around. Maybe they didn't like the chemistry between him and Emily Blunt. Maybe they didn't like that those two were the ones that were brought in to do this movie. Or the stunt guy stuff. I don't know. But it was good. I still think it'll do well in terms of DVR or video on demand. I think it'll do well with that. So it feels like a minor miracle, the story says, that the sequel didn't have its budget inflated. They kept it so the film could reach profitability without having to break box office records. And that's the way it should be, he says, the writer here in the story. Will Smith apparently can still draw audiences. And listen, I will say this, it's Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. Like, we can't see Will Smith with somebody else if it's not Martin Lawrence. It's got to be those two in the roles. Like, it's a shame that Joe Pantoliano's character was killed off, but they kept him in there in a way. So, like, you still got that here. But it is a different thing when he's not like the regular part of the movie, but it still worked anyway, no matter what. And they pointed it out. I don't want to spoil it, but I think one of the things they did in the movie to help kind of, let's just say, talk about the slap that Chris Rock took at the Oscars, and that was kind of, in a way, they kind of played it up in the movie in a scene. I'll just say this. It worked. It worked. Will Smith remains one of the most recognizable movie stars. Now, it's been a while since he made a non-franchise film turn into a hit, but that's more the state of Hollywood than it is about him. He helped make Suicide Squad a much bigger than expected success. The Aladdin remake became a $100 billion success, a $1 billion success, excuse me. And now Bad Boys as a franchise has actually endured for nearly 3 decades. Will Smith is a hugely valuable movie star, period. Yeah. But let's not forget he did get the Oscar for King Richard. Like, he's still performing. He might just not be a good guy behind the scenes from all that we ever heard, but you know what? Knows how to market himself, knows how to put himself out there, and it works. So no matter what, a whole lot of things were going right for this movie, and I'm glad to see it. And this is the part where, like, you don't need to make a sequel just to make a sequel. You should pick and choose which things should actually happen to see what can happen of it. And that's the part I think we need to really look at more than anything. And as a matter of fact, Jerry Bruckheimer has been approached. And the producer of Bad Boys says a 5th movie is already being discussed. So it didn't take much time to see that, hey, the movie did well. It made its money. So let's see what happens with that. So let's hear what Jerry says. And he spoke with Deadline and said, quote, "We've had discussions. We wanted to see how this did at the box office. And I'm sure we'll have conversations this week. It happens. I can't give you a specific date. I know we've had dips for certain pictures that were sure winners that didn't happen, and something else sneaks in there and becomes a huge hit. The audience is there. You just got to give them something they want to see. And we don't know what that is, but we do our best efforts." And by the way, they've done a great job at continuously marketing this movie. So Will and Martin have been out there. I've seen them interviewed by everybody. They have been everywhere they can possibly be to get this movie out there. So I give them credit on that. It's worked out. So good on them, and good to go and see this movie going on. Now, in a story from Collider, they actually did the rankings of the Bad Boy movies in their opinion. So I want to take what they think about that. They say that Bad Boys Ride or Die is 4th. Again, Adil Arbi and Bilal Fallah were the directors of this movie. According to them, they say that not to rain on the parade too much, but it does feel like the least interesting and most tired entry in the series. Watching it feels like a little watching like this disappointing 4th movie recently released, recently Expendables, you think. That's a bad, I don't like the comparison. I don't agree with that. I don't think it was like Expendables. Expendables was bad, and it looked cheap. So, no, it's a different story. Then they said Bad Boys for Life is 3rd. So they're actually going in the order of. Are you kidding me? No. They said the first Bad Boys was 2nd. What? Oh, I'm not believing this person. I'm sorry. I'm not following this person at all. I want to see what they say. Well, okay, Bad Boys 2. Let's see what they say about this. So they say it might be a stretch to be one of the best action movies of all time. They say it's the most prominent of the shortcomings is that it's a bit too long. It was 2.5 hours. And while the other movies film around 2-hour runtime, some of the crude humor present in the sequel could be tacky, but at least does make Bad Boys 2 memorable. Critics shredded it all the time. And when they go along to say here, they say that the budget got larger for Bad Boys 2. And a good chunk of that money likely went to Will Smith and Martin Lawrence because they're bigger stars. And then Michael Bay did his over-the-top thing. The best action scenes are ludicrously entertaining, especially an extended and destruction-heavy car chase near the end of the film's first act. Yeah, that was good. The car chase around downtown Miami, yes, I give credit. It was also really good. No doubt about it. Smith and Lawrence are at their funniest. And they also have the returning character Reggie as part of this, which, yeah, Reggie and his role going forward in the series has been very good. especially in the last one. That's worth everything right now. Really great. But I didn't need to have the Gabrielle Union character to come in and be involved in this. I didn't need a third part. Nothing against her. I just think that I didn't need a third person to come in there. It's the same thing with, Lethal Weapon, adding, Joe Pesci in it. I don't need Leo Getz. And to continuously put him in these movies, like, no. It's Riggs and Murtaugh. Stop. It's Lowry and Burnett. Let's not add more people to the mix. You're not going to do that. It just doesn't really work. That's all. Now, as for the movies, there's been some stories talked about, what the box office feels like right now. What's the kind of the gauge of things? So I got a couple different places that we're talking about that. VIP from Variety actually talks about the summer movie meltdown math, and they see discouraging trends. So just to kind of make the point, only several movies have made over $100 million domestically. Dune, Godzilla vs. Kong, Kung Fu Panda, and Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Furiosa had the heftiest made budget, $160 million, has not panned out. And when they look at the grosses right now, coming back from the pandemic, by the way, you're seeing that numbers dropped a lot, and they haven't really recovered too much yet. Except for the fact that after the pandemic, the most profitable part of the summer box office movie season was last July, when we saw $1.4 billion being made because of what was going on with Barbenheimer, which just carried along also into the next month. And again, $2 billion being made in July and August of last year. That made it a big deal because that was, at the level of, because July and August last year compared to what we would see in the movie theaters in previous years before pandemic. Because that would be the same thing when you'd see 2012, 2013, all the way to 2019. It was consistently, to reach that $2 billion mark in July and August in 2 months, yeah, they're doing something right. Like right after July 4th weekend, up until the end of August, they're kicking ass. And that's the idea they had from all this as well. Now, they do talk about the end of the summer and what's left. So the moment the next Deadpool sequel already has set record first day ticket sales for any R-rated film ahead of the release date of July 26th. I already got my tickets for that. And Despicable Me 4, but July is barren when it comes to new entries from established franchises. August, you just got Alien Romulus is the only title belonging to familiar IP, and the R rating won't make it a major player. So you really have not much else to go work off of when it comes to what they have. But it's all these movies that got pushed away. Because I forget if Fast and Furious was supposed to be pushed here. We are supposed to have Mission Impossible now. That doesn't happen until next year. Those things really didn't help out at all. So the blockbusters are not here this year. And what are they going to make out of it? Vox puts out a story and says that the post-strike summer was always going to be tough. Lots of reasons not to panic. So Esther Zuckerman of Vox, she talks about that fact that, there are signs of life because Bad Boys Ride or Die beat expectations. Hopes are high for Inside Out 2 and Deadpool Wolverine. So should we be mourning the movie-going experience? Is there hope yet? And, for some people that are moviegoers like myself, we knew the strikes were going to put a damper on this year. That was pretty obvious. And the fact that Furiosa tanked so badly at the start of the Memorial Day weekend shouldn't be the barometer of a bad year. So the Mad Max series and this installment not doing well, and I thought it was good. I liked it. But not a lot of people came to this movie. It just did not do as well. I got a pretty good audience for the first week, but it just did not pan out that well. And again, a lot of guys watching this movie. Very interesting. But it was also another movie that had not had a new episode in a while. And in 2015, they put out Fury Road. They waited too long to put this new one out. And I think just doing another story on Furiosa and a prequel, I think people were not much into it without any Mad Max character in it. That was the part they didn't like either. They talk about the Fall Guy and the flop that has been. So much more to that. And one of the things they also make mention of is that with the Bad Boys movie is that the popularity of the movie among Black and Latino audiences, which is, in essence, if you talk about it, that's the Fast and Furious crowd that goes to these movies. It's that same crowd, basically, that came to watch this movie. It just has a flavor to it. It's got just something there. And you got people that you like in there, and the movies just kind of work out with that, with some certain, a little bit of comedy in there, a lot of action, ridiculous action on top of that. That's what works. But I think what happens now is that we haven't had a good superhero movie in a while. Like, remember, last year we were just bombarded with some not good movies. When you think about it, last year we had Flash, Blue Beetle, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Marvels. Like, those level of movies really disappointed people. Really disappointed people. And with that now, the fact we're going to finally get a superhero movie, like for the first time all year, we're going to finally get here a Marvel movie, a Deadpool movie. We haven't had that in a while, and Deadpool has not disappointed so far. It's worked out well. The idea of Deadpool and Wolverine, they kind of been building it up. It's going to work. And it's also going to be unopposed. It'll be like 2021 all over again, where like Batman had it all on its own, and they just kind of ruled for like a month. Deadpool and Wolverine is going to get that same kind of attention the same way as before. So they haven't screwed up that superhero side of Deadpool. I think what they can do now is they could probably do really well with it. I think it's going to work. So they're going to hold on to that, and they're going to be lucky to have that for themselves anyway. So good on them. Let's go move away from the main event. Let's go and get to some other stories I have that I want to go and cover before we wrap up the program. TV networks fighting for fewer dollars in upfront amid big streaming rollbacks. Yeah, there's a lot of content that's not coming out as much. A lot of pulling back of content. I'm very disappointed right now the fact that in the Power universe, so we have Power Book 2 Ghost that has been going on for a while now. And they're going to pull that story back this year. We're not going to get any more of Tariq, St. Patrick. Like, that story is going to be finishing up. Not at the end of this year, but like towards the end of the year, we won't have anything else. And then next year, we're looking forward to Power. I call it Power Tommy, but Power Book 3 Force. And now that has already been announced that Power Force is going to be finishing after season 3. That's disappointing. And they say that, we're going to find out Tommy's fate, that the conclusion for it will be made. All right. 3 seasons for that. I can understand that. That's okay. I think it still holds up really well. But one of the things is that there's a lot of shit that's already happened. I mean, they already killed off the main drug dealer in there. And so, what else happens next? There's still people that are like other players in the whole race, but Tommy's gotten himself in a lot of shit. So to see him try to survive all this right now, plus, people from New York are already finding out he's there. Yeah, it's all coming in on him. It's all closing in. So that's what we got to see what happens there. To see it be at this point now makes sense. So I don't have a problem with that. I see why they're doing it. Now, I'm wondering if they're going to still do the prequel. We were talking about having where it's Ghost and Tommy when they're first young, working their way into the business of drug dealing. But I don't know yet. So advertisers are pulling back on the amount of money they wish to commit to TV now. 5 executives were talked about with this, with knowledge of recent discussions. They are pressing the networks to significantly roll back on their rates on how much they're being charged for advertising, particularly for streaming inventory that is supposed to be representing the future of the medium. And advertisers have been able to snatch up streaming ad inventory and linear commercial time and deals that call for rollbacks or reductions in cost per minute. And the rollbacks have now come in as much as a decrease at the double-digit percentage range. So linear TV is now commanding some increases for sports and tentpole events that may go up as much as a single percent. Yeah, so sports and Oscars or other award shows, they want to try to get more money on those. That makes sense. A glut of new streaming inventory from the ad-supported tiers of Amazon Prime, Video, Netflix, and Disney Plus has goose supply at a time when demand is not as much and not as robust. There's little impetus to rush to buy, and unless the terms are extremely favorable, they're not late to anything. So one of the other things I'm talking about is that last year's Hollywood labor strike crimped the industry's pipeline on new material, meaning one of the industry's frothiest ad categories, movies and TV shows from streamers, is less bubbly. Pharmaceutical manufacturers, so yeah, the drug companies, one of the biggest stalwarts of TV for the most recent years, owing to the older demographics of current TV viewers, are being more cagey in negotiations. They're putting more pressure on pricing, and because their cases they run longer commercials, 75 to 90 seconds in length, they can fully disclose side effects of their various medications. Many companies that make weight loss drugs are particularly active in the market, according to people with knowledge of talks. Yeah, that's what I really want, and that's what I really can't stand of the commercials. Thank goodness for DVR, so we could pass the ads for Ozempic or whatever else is out there, Jardiance or whatever. Oh man, the horrible commercials. Like, I'll take a Progressive, State Farm, Allstate, Liberty Mutual commercial anytime over any drug ad. Like, I'm just tired of them. Really am. Now, another story that came across, remember I talked last week about Google AI overviews and the whole plan that the news publishers out there, the magazines, the newspapers, they're going to now have to bow to the knee of OpenAI and Google Gemini and all these other AI, of tech AI in general, because they're going to allow the tech AI to go ahead and be a part into their archives. But then also at the same time, they're also going to go ahead and be able to discover more on top of that. So like, yeah, see what goes on with that. It's interesting, but it's like where they are now, they can't win. These media publishers can't win. They wanted to go and try to get, government to bully these companies to pay up a code. That's not going to happen. And if AI comes in, eventually, they're going to become publishers themselves. So the Wrap puts out a story talking about that maybe Section 230 of the internet. Okay, Google's note to self, Section 230 saved you before within YouTube, but maybe not for AI. So the story here from Peter Staffy and the Wrap also talks about this story and talking about how Section 230 might be affecting them, which is kind of the net neutrality kind of distinction. So let's talk about that now. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. The act has been made in place to take away the resource-depleting burden of policing third-party content, generally immunizing big tech from being liable for content uploaded by users. But now the AI is doing it. YouTube and other social media monsters became the juggernauts that they have because users upload endless streams of unchecked content. AI overviews for Google, they can't hide under that Section 230 distinction. Now Google is directly responsible for the specific AI overview content that tops its results and may or may not be accurate. So rocketing users may have strong product liability type claims against the search giant. Now, Google has the resources to try to correct the course here, but it's fair to ask whether it's even possible for AI to always generate a single fully accurate response, since generative AI, by its very nature, steals and reimagines myriad answers of the past, many of which have been very unverified. And Google already has been widely criticized by publishers of the creative community for essentially stealing their livelihoods with AI overviews. Users are led to believe that these paragraphs, based on Google's scraping or wide swaths of publisher content, may be all they need without the need of perusing multiple links or visit any of the third-party sites that fueled them. And Google's potentially limited liability issue at the artificial hands of AI overviews hasn't gotten the attention it deserves. Maybe it shouldn't be surprising, but legal liability isn't nearly as sexy as press coverage of Google blackening its eye with yet another flawed product rollout that featured amusing yet brand-bruising eat rock stories. Listen, I've talked about it. Just because my podcast isn't that big to get like a mainstream audience to listen to it, well, what are you going to do about it? But Section 230, I don't know if they're going to be able to have to deal with that. Because it can't just be Google. I mean, this person obviously has an onus against Google and the fact that, his livelihood might be now overtaken by the fact that Google AI overviews will deter more eyes away from going to thewrap.com and just looking at the story right there from Google's search results, and they don't have to go anywhere else. No, that might be very well the case, but that's going to be one of those things that they, you can see if anything's going to happen with it, but we don't know. That's going to be very tough to go and try to put out there. We'll see. I got some radio stories to talk about now. Some interesting things. One of the areas they talk about here, and this is from Sean Ross, who's a consummate guy that I always follow along when it comes to things here, and some of the stories that come out on a regular basis. So first of all, in music, radio stations, they can't play a lot of new music because they're not the arbiters of new music discovery. That's what streaming is right now. But it's unfortunate because the music comes on right now, they're kind of just not paying attention to it. And the other thing that radio does a bad job is that if they're going to go and play what they call throwbacks, if they're going to play just gold records that are going back to what, 5, 10, 15 years ago, then what they're normally going to do is they're going to keep to a very tight list of music. Like right off the bat, when I heard Power 96, they decided to go hip-hop and throwbacks, right? Classic hip-hop and throwbacks. And that list they have is so tight. Like they're really, I mean, I learned it myself. When I did Spanish radio and I had to go and play gold records, I had to play music that was older. I needed to pack that playlist. I needed to at least get 500 songs. I think I got almost 1,000 songs in the playlist for that station. So I wasn't playing the same songs over and over. If somebody was listening all day to a station that's throwbacks, you can't just throw 200 songs in there. It can't be that. But the idea of some of these stations, these big corporate stations and their research, audience metric testing, to think they're only going to have like 200 songs they need to put in there, like if it's an 80s station or it's a 90s station or it's a 2000s to now, whatever it is, or a classic rock station. If you're going to play a whole wide variety of older music, of gold or recurrence, you need to put a bigger list out there. It can't be 200 songs because you're going to run through that just like any other station. Like I already know that like a top 40 station or a new music station maybe plays 100 and 120 songs. And for the most part, that top 40 is the one that's really going to get played the most. And some stations may even play less a list. But so the throwback boom at CHR radio right now. A greater percentage of the hour is going to older songs, tending to be from 2005 to 2012, more than from recent years. And it's harder for a standalone throwbacks format to take hold with so many shared records. Classic hit stations are starting to push into that area as well. So recency would count for something, at least the top 40. But if you look at the 100 most played CHR old, according to Media Base, which is the iHeartRadio kind of base thing. It's one of those companies that do like, these kind of stats. They'll usually play like about 7 songs that are number from 2009, 9 from 2010, 11 from 2011, 5 from 2012. And sometimes they'll play songs from 2013 to 2017, 9 songs altogether. So for those that believe the top 40 is cyclical, the late 10s somehow count as both the extreme, less melodic trap pop hits derived from hip hop beats, and doldrums, not a lot of tempo or excitement despite that. As often happens in such years, it was a good time for such soft pop outliers. So there was Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper's Shallow that filled the void for real hits, but didn't sell anything for top 40 radio. And the big enduring songs that are dotted with, they were threatened by streaming, were those that were never really big pop hits, but also presented then a very present radio hits that are lost now. Right? There's a lot of songs that, for whatever reason, in the 2000s, we've had a lot of songs that have just become disposable. There's just not that retainability of putting them back on and playing them again. And that's the part they're talking about with here. So are listeners waiting for Mine by Bozzy to be played again? Still not a lot of ratings evidence that are so excited about hearing Toxic or Party Rock Anthem or any of their 80s, the aughts or early 10 songs that have become staples. They talked to the host of Liveline, Mason Kelter, and says his top 50 gold tabulations are dominated by older titles. So he'll play songs like The Weeknd's The Hills and Starboy, Chainsmokers Closer, Ed Sheeran's Shape of You, 21 Pilots Stressed Out, and some other oh wow titles that haven't become throwback staples, Mike Posner's Cooler Than Me or Eminem's Mockingbird, but they're older. Matt Bailey talks to Sean Ross and says that, it takes always about 15 years for nostalgia to really kick in. During all the decades of my life, he says that saying 70s disco seemed thoroughly exiled, but became a major part of AC radio. Then classic hits in the 90s and 2000s. So in general, there's not a lot of love for the late 2010s yet, and a few enduring songs. And it's telling that, that many of the huge hits of the 2010s don't stand the test of time. It was a bad time for top 40, and listeners probably don't want to remember it. And I remember there was also a change because of what music was going out to radio that was getting consumed by streaming, because the 2010s were completely consumed by streaming towards the second half of the 2010s. The late 10s is when CHR found itself grappling with the impact of streaming and songs that didn't sound like traditional radio records. And it's still hard to know what songs were truly ratified at the time. Then you had EDM artists like Zedd, Calvin Harris, and Chainsmokers redefining their sound from big dance anthems to more ballads and more radio-friendly stuff. Took the wind out of the sails for their fans who wanted more up-tempo fun songs. Right, that too. But there's no good answer for that. The thing is, you shouldn't have to go into this route here. If you would still learn how to go and be new music discovery, as I've talked about on this program, that streaming doesn't have to go and be the first place, the first portal for music to be noticed. Radio could be there first, but they don't want to be for whatever reason. A technical story, FCC is going to reinstate FM duplication rules for commercial FMs. So AM stations with over 50% of overlapping signals, they can be simulcasted on an FM frequency. That was taken away and now it's been brought back. And then one more show I want to bring up here is a essay being written by Stephen Goldstein. It's a radio consultant. And he's talking about how podcasting captures younger audiences in an aging media world. Basically saying that podcasting is the new talk radio. So in his survey that he has done, he says that TV and print media are experiencing a demographic shift that is impossible to ignore. The median age of linear primetime TV viewers is 64.6 years old. Cable channels are a bit younger. So like TNT right now has an average age of a viewer as 56 years old. HGTV, 66 years old. MTV now, 51 years old is your average median viewer. The average age of newspaper readers, 60 years old. Magazine readers, 52. Of course, among those that still subscribe. Talk radio, traditional talk radio on terrestrial radio. Your average age on there is 58 years old. And the category of spoken word has grown substantially in the past 10 years. Much of the listening has gone from broadcast to podcast, especially during younger demographics where podcasting exceeds AM and FM. For younger listeners, podcasting is the new talk radio. I mean, I'm talk radio right now on these shows. If I could do music, I would do music, but there's so much going on to be able to allow that. That's the part that we kind of talk about here. So you talk about with podcasting, it offers a unique opportunity for brands to reach hard-to-find younger listeners with targeted, compelling content. And a recent study showed that podcast ads and sponsored content feel more personal and less intrusive than traditional media, many of which are saturated with ads. I try to do that. I mean, there's ads that are embedded in here that are programmable, and I put them in there because I need to make something off this show. But I'm not here plugging away. I don't bother. I think it's better off not to be that way. I think it just works better that way. I just get in, do the news here, do the study, and be done and get out of there. You know, that's what I do. I like it that way. Oh, by the way, Steve Goldstein, founder and CEO of Amplified Media, and he's also an adjunct professor at NYU, teaching the course on the business of podcasting. That'd be kind of cool. All right, we're going to leave it there. That's the show for tonight, and I appreciate all of you for checking in and catching the shows you always do. And if you haven't had a chance to go and do so, I would highly recommend go ahead and go check out for yourselves Bad Boys Ride or Die in the theaters. Like, I mean, there's not much else going on, but the movie's very good. They did a good job with it. I really enjoyed it. I might even still go see it again. I don't know. I got a few things that I'm doing, so I don't know if I'm going to make tomorrow night or Saturday night open for me to do it. Like, I'm still on the fence. I think about it. I just need more movies. Bike Riders I'll see in 2 weeks. The Kevin Costner Western coming up after that. I'll probably watch that coming up in 2 weeks as well. Come back for another Broadcasters Podcast. Remember, content is king. Control of your content is in your hands.